Okay, brilliant. Let's bring this, let's get this party started, shall we? Okay, so I think I'm still sharing actually, so I'm just going to jump straight into my slide deck here. And that says to me it's still presenting as well. So this is Mark Anderson, ICT evangelist, sharing my session for the Global EdTech Academy, exploring different ways to stay connected with learners. Thank you, Jeffrey. Hi to you too. Hope you find the session interesting. The Global EdTech Academy has been running for quite a while now, good month or so into its schedule. There's a lot that's been shared already. This is my 10th session, for example. So really excited to be sharing with so many amazing educators as part of this this series of free professional development, professional learning opportunities provided by Microsoft and Q. My details are on screen if you'd like to stay in touch with me. My Twitter handle is ICT Evangelist, and there are some hashtags that we're using as part of the organisation with all of this, which obviously the usual sort of Microsoft Edu, and we've got the GETA, G-E-T-A, the Global EdTech Academy, and a very popular hashtag as well, We Are Q. And say, all the sessions are recorded just like this one, and you can access those again. I've got a URL for that, but all the sessions are being run and organised via the address you can see here on the screen now, which is q.org/Microsoft. If you go to that URL, you'll find all the forthcoming sessions and what's happening across the course of the coming weeks with the Global EdTech Academy. And obviously, as I said, all the sessions are being recorded. So should you want to watch anything back again, if you go to q.org/GetARecording, then you can find the full playlist there on YouTube, and it's had tens of thousands of views already, as you can well imagine, with so many sessions being organised and run by so many different people as well. As I say, my name's Mark Anderson, and my Twitter handle is ICT Evangelist. I always say in every session where I am working with educators that I don't do what I call drive-by sessions. So yes, I'm turning up now and I'm and I'm presenting to you, and all very good and very well and all of those things, but it might be that tomorrow or next week or week after that you've got some further questions or want some more advice or things around areas that we've been discussing and talking about during the course of this presentation today. If that's the case and you'd like to get in touch and ask some more questions, please do drop me a line at ICT Evangelist on Twitter. Yes, if you want to, you can get in touch via my website, which is just down here down the bottom. But we are far better when we're in this sort of thing together when it comes to teaching and learning with technology. And sure, I'm happy to respond to a question via email. If you ask me a question on social media, not only will you get my responses, but you'll also get access to the other tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, in fact, of teachers who use Twitter as a professional learning platform every single day to help them develop and learn new skills. So please do stay in touch, follow me, all those sorts of things. If you have any follow-up questions, please do use Twitter, because it's such an amazing place full of positivity and loads of educators all working together to support teaching and learning and each other. So that's that, and how you can stay in touch with me and all those sort of things. And this is the session where we're going to be looking at, that's a wrong slide there, how we're going to sort of stay connected with our learners. Well, the question is, why do we want to be connected with our learners? Certainly, we one of those funny things, and I'm sure this has happened to you before, you go to the supermarket and you see some of your students and they're like, oh my goodness, they exist outside of school. And we don't go around normally hanging around with our learners outside of school, but it is important to have a connection with them, and it is important to have a strong, positive relationship with our learners in our classes. Why do we want to be connected? Well, the research says, and this comes from a book by John Hattie called Visible Learning for Teachers. And Visible Learning for Teachers has so many different bits of research in there to look at and explore what works when it comes to teaching and learning with technology. And as we can see on the chart here, this is thinking about student relationships, okay? And so strong teacher-student relationships originally from his research had an impact of 0.72. Further research saw the effect size shrink down a bit to 0.52, with the average effect size being 0.4. But as you can see on the scale which goes around here, if we want a desired effect, okay, then it needs to be somewhere in this area. Oops, just gone too far there. In this area that we can see just here. And even if it is at its base rate a level of 0.4, then we are into this realm here in the zone of desired effects. And as it marks here, it is a high impact effect. And so when it comes to thinking about teacher-student relationships, and if it is 0.72, that places it somewhere just over here, okay? And even if it's been reduced to here or even here, it's still, slap bang in the zone of desired effects. And so what we want to try and do is, in this session, unpick ways in which we can develop and maintain and sustain strong teacher-student relationships. Now, a large part of that is a triangulation between three sort of key people, really. Obviously, there's you over here, happy, smiley, lovely job teacher over here. Then we've got the student themselves, who may be happy or may be unhappy. Okay, but I mentioned a triangulation, and the other area where you need to have a strong relationship is with the parents, because if you don't have that triangulation between those three people providing a wrapper of care around the learner, then the learner themselves is likely to not be as successful as they otherwise would. And it makes sense. It's common sense, isn't it? If you've got a strong relationship with your students, if you've got a strong relationship with with the parents of the student who can support that student as well, then obviously that's in the long run going to benefit and help that student. Now, one of the issues is as well, and I'll unpick and think about this a little bit in a few moments as well, but not every parent is a good parent. And that's a really difficult thing to discuss and talk about. But for some of your students, you as teacher are going to be their role model. You are going to be their rock. You are going to be the person they turn to. And so it is our professional duty, moral duty even, to be that strong link, that strong person, that person who is there for and supporting that young person throughout their entire schooling and time that they have with you. So yes, it's important to have this triangulation. It's important to make sure that you are on good relationships both with the students and the parents to provide that wrapper of care around the outside. But you are in a really important position as a role model in that young person's life. And as it says in the things you can see on this slide here, the research says it can have a big impact, a high, in fact, high impact on student progress, and that can have these big impacts is super important to have. So one thing John Hattie says in his book Visible Learning for Teachers, and if you're looking to buy this book, if you haven't seen, there are lots and lots of books that John Hattie has written since Visible Learning for Teachers, Maximising Impact on Learning, all linked to the various parts of research. But the good one to start off with really is this one, Visible Learning for Teachers, because it covers everything. And then it sort of gives you the opportunity to then sort of dive deeper into the further studies and investigations and things in the subsequent books that he released. But in this book, he says, if you want to increase student academic achievements, give each student a friend. Now, when he says that, what he means is, I think, from how it sort of lies and falls within the book, it all ties in around to this idea of having strong student-teacher relationships. Now, this isn't about being a friend who you hang out with or go to the shop with or have a social life with or any of those sorts of things. This is far more professional and critical friend. So in a previous session, I was talking about the work of Ron Berger and his book, An Ethic of Excellence. In there, he talks about how you give feedback. And that was my previous session, actually. And I mentioned some things from, in fact, I'm just going to jump forward a bit in this session just to reinforce this point about friendship, because it's not about being a friend to a student, it's far more about professional critical friend relationship. I'm just going to discard those inking things there for a second, but I want to talk about what Ron Berger says about both feedback, where he talks about being kind and being specific and being helpful when it comes to giving feedback. Okay, but I also want to sort of draw in on this bit here as well. Because for many of your learners, they will lack in self-esteem. And in his book, Berger talks about self-esteem coming from accomplishments, not compliments. And that's the kind of relationship that we should be having with our learners. Yes, we're there when they turn up at our door to our classroom, whether it's a physical door or a virtual door. You know, we're there, we're smiling, we're asking them how they are, we're catching up, we're reinforcing those bonds that sort of forge that strong relationship between you and your learner. But it's about not complimenting the students and all those sort of things, but giving the opportunity for them to really do things well and to have accomplishments and supporting them in that role. And that's sort of a variety of ways and means. It could be, as I mentioned here, about how you give the feedback, where it's kind and specific and helpful and targeted and helping them to move forward with all those things. But the key is to remember that, yes, it's a friendly approach, and the child needs a champion, someone to, and perhaps champion was a better word for Hattie to use. But you are going to be their champion. You're going to be their hero. You're going to be the person who is there, giving them that opportunity to really shine in a safe environment, in a place where their opinion is respected, and all those different things. So how do you go about doing all of this? Well, for me, it's about building trust. Okay, now, so far, I haven't really mentioned any forms of technology. Don't worry, I will be bringing in the technology stuff in just a moment, because technology can support us in all these different endeavours that we're trying to undertake here. And certainly with the global pandemic the way that it is at the moment, and we can really super utilise these tools that are available to us through Microsoft 365 to really build this trust with our learners. But there are some key things which have got nothing to do with technology at all that can underpin what we try and do and why we try and do it. So the first thing is about having, strong character and making sure that you are that role model, that person who turns up and represents and does what's required of them. Equally, that you show them genuine care, that you're competent in what you do. If you say you're going to do something, actually do it. If you say submit your work here, your feedback will be given to you in X amount of time, or if there are standard sort of published guidelines for how quickly you turn around your feedback and those sort of things, then do that and make sure you do it, and do it in consistent ways. Because again, as somebody who's a rock and a support and a mentor and a champion for the children, these are key things that enable them to really trust where you are in your role as their teacher. So have good and strong character, genuinely care for the learners that you are working with, show them competence in what it is that you do, and be consistent in how you go about doing that. And don't try and be everything all at once. Something I found in my 20 years of teaching is you can't do everything all the time, and everyone's going to have a bad day. So how we can actually go about making it work for us and work for our learners is super important, but don't try and do it all at once. Having a sort of slow but sure approach is a good way of moving things forwards for you and your learners. So I did say there were ways that we can do this with technology. It is an EdTech session after all. But having our use of technology underpinned by our values and underpinned by some research is always a good place to start, I feel, which is why lots of my sessions start with these sorts of explorations as to why we choose to do what it is that we do. So Microsoft 365 has you covered in lots of different ways. And I've got a nice little simple way for us to have a little play with right now, just simply within Excel. Okay, so just to help with things, I'm going to just copy this URL. I'm just going to pop it into our chat. So let's jump across into here a second and paste it into here. And did I press the right button? I don't think I pressed the right keyboard shortcut. Let's try that again. And that should come through to you there now. Brilliant stuff. If you could just open that URL for me, and that will take you through, he says, fingers crossed, to a Excel spreadsheet that I've created for checking in purposes. Okay, now if he goes to the tab in the worksheet that's coming through onto mine, This isn't the one, this isn't the correct one, this is on attendee 5 at the bottom here. If you can go across to where it says checking in sheet on the bottom left hand side, you can see that I'm moving there now, unless you're not on screen, but you'll see there's a variety of worksheets inside this Excel spreadsheet, inside this workbook. Could you please just move to the one which says checking in sheet across the bottom? And this is a really simple way of anonymously getting or taking the temperature of how things are inside your classroom. Now, this could be something that you have a shortcut to in your bookmark bar, or something that your students regularly go to, or a tabbed section within Microsoft Teams, or however it is that you feel that you want to actually engage and get into those things. But all you have to do, and please do this yourself, in the space that I've indicated here, given how you're feeling today, could you please colour a cell? And it's that easy. So I'm feeling pretty good. I've had a few cups of coffee. I'm going to click into this cell here, D5, and I'm going to colour it a colour which represents how I feel today. Very quickly, and then there it goes. And what's lovely is when you do this with your learners, you can see really quickly and easily, at a glance, what the temperature is like inside your classroom. And I don't mean the actual temperature, obviously. What I'm talking about is the temperature for how students are feeling. And finding out those things and checking in on your learners and all of that is a super important way to sort of maintain sort of connectivity between your learners, sustaining those relationships with your learners, and also letting them know that you're there and that you care. And there are further options you can put in with this example in the workbook that you can see in front of you. So you can see attendee 1. If this was my class, I'd obviously have their names across the bottom. I could, if I wanted to, password protect each of the various sections, so there's an individual password for each of the learners. And there's an opportunity there for just a date and a reply. Quick question: hi, how are you? This is a safe space for a more personalised response. If children want to drop you a line, there are many ways in which you can be contacted. I've just put in as an idea a little hyperlink here to email me. If you were to click that, that would then drop an email. It would open your email client, probably Outlook, so that you're able to drop me an email as well if you wanted to. So there are many, many ways that we can use technology. This is one such tool where we can do this. I'm just going to check on checking in sheet, see if anybody's coloured that in other than me. No, nobody yet. Never mind, not to worry. But it may well be that you're sitting there thinking, well, this is all very well and good, but we could do this sort of thing in Teams. Absolutely. There are lots of ways of doing similar things with technology. And what I'm trying to do and share during this session are some ways that I would use it, and some things that would work for me within my class and with my students in a way that would sort of tie in quite nicely with all of that. So it's super easy to set this up. This is just some simple Excel formatting, and I've gone to the share icon and got the share URL. I've used bit.ly as a vanity link service. So I've made my own sort of shortcut to this, and you saw that in the actual presentation I had. So it's just bit.ly/Excel checking in. And by going to that address, it's super easy then just to fill in the form, just like you've seen there. Just in case there's any questions about this activity, I'm just going to jump into here and see if anybody has any questions about it. I can't see any questions, so I'm just going to jump straight back into my presentation. I'll pop back in and check in questions and things in a few moments as well. So if there's anything extra, please feel free to pop your or any questions or comments into the chat during the session as well. I'm very happy to take those sort of things from you during the session. So that's one way of doing things with Excel. And so I'm a big fan of Excel, but it isn't just about Excel. Microsoft Forms are also a useful way of doing a similar kind of activity. And again, taking feedback from your learners and involving yourself and taking comments from them is a great way to involve them in their learning process. Another organisation that shares lots and lots of research here in the UK is the Education Endowment Foundation. And their research sort of marries up with that of Hattie's, where they say that some of the strongest or the biggest impacts you can have with your learners is thinking around this idea of metacognition and self-regulation. And so this idea with Microsoft Forms, and if I just copy this URL again and drop it into the chat, a little look at this one as well. There we go. I'll just paste that one in there for you all in there. Again, bit.ly is a fantastic little tool for taking often quite long links. And don't get me wrong, the options for sharing within Forms are great. You can copy a URL from Forms and paste it straight into OneNote class notebook, for example, and it will embed the form directly inside OneNote. You can put it as a tab thing within Teams if you want to. You could share it in chat like this. There are loads of ways in which you can do it easily, but I do like using the vanity link option to help keep me sort of honest and keep me on track with what it is that I'm trying to achieve. So look, that's the URL there, and let's have a little look at what I'm trying to do with this. So Forms, as you're probably aware, is a great tool by Microsoft for surveying and running quizzes and doing all sorts of things. For differentiation, for branching, for all sorts of different activities. But an activity I've undertaken with my learners for many, many years now is this idea of a keep, grow and change. And I do it as a reflective thing at the end of a project. So what things did you think went well? So we're going to keep those. What things could have been better? So that's the grow bit, and which things didn't work, and that's the change bit. And so this is a simple form where I'm just connecting with my learners, and they're finding out, and we can use Forms for checking in as well, like we did with Excel a second ago. You can do just do some questions and do it that way. The reason why I like using Excel actually though is that idea that space where you've got all the very sort of traffic lighting, the sort of rag rated red, amber, green colouring on here. You can see it really quickly at a glance how all of your students are feeling within your particular class, and I love the sort of visual aspect of it. But again, you can do it just as easily or get similar results through using Microsoft Forms if you want to. So in this form, I've got some very simple questions. What was your favourite bit about this course? How could you have done better? How will you improve next time? How could I have done better as your teacher? Which bits should we keep? Which bits should we develop? Which bits should we change? Now, the thing I found most difficult when I first started doing these sorts of activities for my learners was actually taking on board sort of criticism from the students themselves. And that can be quite a difficult thing to actually do. This question for how could I have done better as your teacher? Now, asking students that question is not only quite difficult for us as educators, and it's not about us having done anything wrong, but it is important to take on board the feedback that our stakeholders, our key stakeholders, our learners actually have about us and what it is that we do. Just because students give us that feedback doesn't necessarily mean that we have to act upon it, but it really does help us take the temperature for things in our classroom. Actually, what you'll tend to find is, from my experience at least, is that for the most part, the feedback you get from your students is overwhelmingly positive. They absolutely love you. They love what you're doing. They love the projects and the time and the care and the attention you put into giving them their feedback, or this or that, or this or that, or this or that. Sometimes you get an angry student, and we come across those because that's how things are in life sometimes. But some students might use it as a vehicle just to let off some steam. It might not actually be about you. It might just be having a bad day themselves, and they put things in here which they maybe don't mean. Either which way, though, taking on board this feedback helps to foster and develop a really open and honest culture in your classroom. And that's what I'm trying to get at here. This is about going in and really building trust with your students and role modeling and all those sort of things, and putting your hand up and saying, sometimes I don't do things as perfectly as I could do. So let me know how you think I can do better. And that's going, if we could jump back into the presentation for a second. Here we go. This is all about doing these things we're talking about here, about building trust with your learners, because again, what we're trying to do is triangulate that wrap of care and support around each of your children that you work with by showing them a strong character yourself, showing that you genuinely care, and we show that we care by listening to each other. So that's the idea and the thinking behind using forms in this kind of a way. It's showing you're competent. It's a slow but steady approach, and it's not just a flash in the pan as well. If it's something that you're going to start working on and undertaking with your learners, then it's something you should be doing, whenever it's appropriate. This is a sort of end of a project kind of survey. It might be that you want to do this sort of thing end of each project. It could be something you want to do end of each term, semester. It might be something you want to do end of each academic year. It might be end of an exam course. How did the exam course go? What could we have done better as a team? It doesn't necessarily need to be about you. If you're in a middle leadership role or even a senior leadership role, how could you find out what your various key stakeholders feel about it? And relationships are important, not just with the children, but also in peer-to-peer relationships. So could you undertake a similar activity with your colleagues? If you're a head of department or a head of school or a principal or somebody on leadership, could you ask similar questions of your colleagues to find out how you could do better yourself as well? Because the truth of the matter is, while strong teacher-student relationships improve outcomes, it's also true in terms of leadership. Having good relationships with your colleagues also improves outcomes overall. And in fact, going back into the idea of John Hattie in his research, one of the things which has the biggest impact on student progress is collective teacher efficacy. And so if you've got an organisation where every teacher is working hard on the same page and providing strong learning outcomes for all students, then that collective teacher efficacy is going to obviously have a big impact on student progress and outcomes. And so again, the things we take from how we work with our learners can also be taken and applied to what we do with each other as adults in our professional learning capacities. So that's the idea there behind Microsoft Forms. It's taking on board the ideas of developing relations and developing relationships, fostering this culture of trust, fostering this idea that we're in this together, sort of self-regulation, involving learners in the learning process, which is metacognition, sharing how they should be learning, all these sorts of things. And that's the thinking behind this particular idea here. I was going to jump back into the Teams instance here to see if there's any questions here at all in relation to any of this, and I can't see anything, so I'm just going to jump back into my presentation. So here we go, and we were about here. So we had two live examples here with the Excel and the Microsoft Form, and I've got a few more ideas to run by you of a similar nature. So yes, Excel, yes, Forms. But Teams itself is huge as well, and I'm somebody who doesn't mind sort of putting his hand up. I was not taken with Teams back when. It does require some setup and all the rest of it, but it has actually proven to be completely transformational. I don't think learning would have taken place and happened as well as it has across the world since we all started having to go into lockdown if it wasn't for Microsoft Teams. I think Microsoft Teams is a product that Microsoft should be rightly very, very proud of. And there are so many amazing things that you can do with it. And again, it goes to that consistency of approach and ease of access and all those sorts of things. But there are so many ways in which we can use Teams to, again, connect, join in, foster relationships, and support each other as well. And we can see some of those in Teams really, really easily. Yes, I know I'm recording, and people do know. Thank you very much. But I can use the chat feature. I've been using the chat feature directly within the live presentation today. We can use GIFs inside here. I can change how my writing's formatted. I can change delivery options. I can attach files. I can show how I'm feeling. And then we had that Excel sheet before, color a cell in red, amber, or green, depending on how you feel. It could just be we put in a little emoji to show how we feel. Okay, so it's super easy to put these things in and to use them. As we said, we've got GIFs that we can pull in from Giphy, and we can drop in different stickers. I'm just going to choose a random sticker like so. Teams has so many amazing features that can be really, really supportive. And again, that idea about inclusion. something I used to struggle with when I first started teaching was involving all the learners inside my classroom. I had 30 students in my classroom. We didn't really have any technology because it was 20 plus years, well, 25 years ago then. And I was worried about that hidden learner in the classroom. When we have access to tools such as Teams in the classroom, or even beyond when we're working under lockdown, there is no reason now why any child should go sort of unanswered or shouldn't be able to respond. Now, I understand there's issues around digital divide for some students. Every student has access to a device and can engage synchronously in a session. But there are plenty of asynchronous ways in which we can do things, as we've seen with the examples with Microsoft Forms and with Microsoft Excel as well. But you can do things live in session. Just a quick show of hands. Who's here today? And just use the raise your hand feature, and then your hands all appear. I can see all the people in participation here on the show participants tab here. We've also got other options available to us as well. We can go into together mode. If you haven't seen together mode yet, I'll just turn it on now. But if I turn together mode on, it brings everyone who's on camera into a space in one room together. So if you, Jeffrey or Jason, want to turn your cameras on for a second, then you better join me in this together mode. And there, again, this is not necessarily about learning, but in terms of developing and fostering those relationships and making people feel that they're part of something together. If you turn your cameras on now, Jason and Jeffrey, you will be in the same room as me, be sat in a chair next to me. And, obviously not sat next to me. We've heard from Jason earlier that he's, in Wichita in Kansas. Well, clearly, somebody who's in England right now, we are not actually together. But using this technology to bring people together that otherwise couldn't be together is a great way of doing those sort of things as well. And I've got some new messages here down at the bottom. Jeffrey, my account. There we go. Look, and you're right next to me. Hi, how you doing? You okay? And so turning these things on is really easy. And together mode is in the more actions on the little hamburger you can see here, more actions. And I've just turned together mode on like so. And the more you have inside your team, the more you can bring together into together mode like this. Okay. And obviously we can do other things to, let's go turn that off for a second there. He says, let's go back to gallery. There we go. And this is you there, Jeffrey, now. So Teams is a great tool. There are loads of ways in which you can do all these things and bring people together. You don't have to use the vanity stuff like I showed you a second ago as well. You can bring that through into your main Teams area, into your channel, into your stream. You can share things in there, communication, collaboration, all those things sort of tie in really, really well inside there. So there are more ways in which Microsoft have got you covered, and I'm kind of doing a bit of a spoiler here by having my presentation off. But yeah, we talked about Excel. Yes, we can use Forms. Yes, we got Teams. Just using the calendar feature is super helpful as well. Again, consistency, competency, all those things, but mapping things out and helping your learners so that they're able to know where they need to be, when they need to be, when things need to be sort of set, all those sort of things, using the assignments feature and getting those things all onto their calendar so they can be better organized and supported and all those sort of things. Again, really help with that whole trust building thing. When things are really transparent, people can still miss deadlines and can make mistakes and have life can get in the way sometimes with hitting targets and all these sorts of things. But again, using technology to help us make things really super transparent, and so that there's no excuses as well. It's not about being a soft touch. Yes, we want to catch our students in rather than catching them out, but we don't want them to feel like they're not able to access all these different things. And just simple use of things like the calendar tool, again, can be really helpful to us in terms of making sure our learners know what they should be doing, when they should be doing it, where they should be doing it, so forth and so on. Microsoft Stream is a really great way of sort of sharing things as well and bringing your learners together into one space. The collaboration is really, really huge as well. And the key idea here I thought about in relation to Microsoft Stream is using PowerPoint in a collaborative fashion for students to create their presentations, to demonstrate their knowledge, skills, learning, creativity, all those sorts of things. Remember, using PowerPoint doesn't have to be something where you are doing something purely just to explain something. There are many creative outlets and opportunities available within inside Microsoft PowerPoint now. Obviously, you'll have heard the phrase "death by PowerPoint," I'm sure, many times before. But if you're using PowerPoint how you were in 1997 or later, if you're using PowerPoint in ways that you used to use when you first started to sort of train to be a teacher, then you are really missing a trick. There are so many amazing features in PowerPoint now. And the reason why I mentioned Microsoft Stream, and again, I'm just giving the cat's out the bag with the rest of the things here, but I'll explain all those in just a second. But I've got this recording tab here within Microsoft PowerPoint, and obviously, and we can collaborate on all these different things that we're doing using PowerPoint. So we can do it in PowerPoint online. But if we were actually to record our presentation that we've made, and if you want to as well, just go to stream.microsoft.com. You can actually record your screen directly from within Microsoft Stream in browser as well. So simply go to stream.microsoft.com. Super easy to bring up your PowerPoint presentation and record yourself speaking over the top of it. And the features and functionality inside PowerPoint now is absolutely immense as well. It's not just a case of using images and text. You can bring in some really amazing things now, such as 3D models. You can design them yourself and save them from Paint 3D and bring them directly into PowerPoint and use them if you want to as well. If you go onto here, it'll bring up the online sources, and you'll see there's amazing 3D models in here of the human heart and lungs and other things in anatomy. There's some animated models, and there's some things specifically animated for education. You've got chemistry sets in here as well. Different moles and molecule setups that you can drag or click onto the one, choose insert, and then you have these 3D models that you can actually interact with and engage with directly on your actual slide. You can animate them and you can engage with those modeled when you're running your presentation. Again, all these amazing ways in which you can use this technology to really foster openness, transparency, and opportunities to do things, as Ruben Pontajura talks about as his summer model, to do things that wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the technology. It can really support our endeavours, our collective endeavours in the classroom. When you need it as well, if a student's dropped you a line, then it's really easy using the Meet Now feature in Teams to be able to bring everyone together into a quick meeting. It could be using the Together Now feature, so that you saw a few seconds ago. Or it could just be for a quick one-to-one meeting. It also helps you be more efficient as well. And we talked earlier about the importance of relationships, not just between yourself and your students, but also yourself and your parents, and also yourself and your colleagues. As somebody who probably has a pastoral element to your teaching as well, having an opportunity to have sort of parent-teacher conference meetings is super important as well. And under lockdown and issues around the pandemic, I've seen lots of schools transitioning to parent-teacher consultation evening meetings being done through Teams and being super successful as well. In fact, many teachers have reported they prefer using Teams as a means of having a parents' evening than they would do having things face-to-face. Things happen at a set time, parents arrive at a set time, they know when it's got to be finished, there's a countdown timer, all those different things. But again, it goes back to that whole thing about building trust, about being consistent, being competent, being present, being honest, all those different things. And Meet Now wasn't created for that particular purpose. But what it does is it supports it. And that's the idea, I'm guessing. Excel wasn't designed to do online check-ins, forms wasn't designed, so forth and so on. They can really help foster and develop and improve those student, teacher, and parent relationships, sort of keeping in the back of our mind that whole triangulation between home, school, and child. Inking is really useful as well. Again, making things really clear. It might be that Jeffrey came and asked me a question. I can say, well, actually, what I'm trying to say to you is this bit here, or I'm trying to point out this here to you, or I'm trying to say something else over here. Again, just using these tools to bring yourself closer and more relevant to your learners and responsive to your learners. Okay, and again, that's where technology really has the win. Mark, teacher of 25 years ago, best will in the world, with 25 to 30 students in the classroom, I wouldn't get to speak to and track the progress of and find out lots of things from all the students in my class during an hour long lesson. I try to, but it's just so hard to actually do that all the time. But technology makes it a win. And actually, if you've got 30 people in the session with you, it is very easy for them to be able to respond, put their hand up, add something into the chat for you to see, so forth and so on. And you can respond in a way which works really, really well for them. I think inking is really great for making things super relevant to the learners when you're working with them and doing things such as I am right now. If there's one tool that is fantastic for engaging and immersing your learners and giving them an opportunity to do things well that work with inside access to technology and accessing resources through the tools that Microsoft have available to you, Immersive Reader is for me probably the most important part of the entire Microsoft 365 suite. When I was thinking about those 30 students in my class, I can't be there supporting them left, right and centre all the way, all the time. But things such as the learning tools available from Microsoft, of which Immersive Reader is part of that, is so important in terms of inclusion and accessibility. It isn't just that, though. All these things are sort of tied in. Really, accessibility is built into the heart of what Microsoft do now. If I was, for example, to drag an image into a slide in PowerPoint, just to help with those students who are going to be accessing the slides through Immersive Reader, for example, it automatically puts in the alt text a description of what that particular image is. And so if I put in a picture of me in a suit, it would say, a man in a suit, to describe that image on the slide. And so again, accessibility, engagement, involvement, bringing all these things through into the tools that you're using, just make it so that you've got that. I think it's important to revisit this and stress this key point. It's all about building trust, showing you've got character, showing genuine care, showing your competence and consistency, and doing it in slow, steady, slow but sure ways. Okay. So I'll let the cat out of the bag with the final one, which is Flipgrid. Flipgrid, if you haven't used it before, is a fantastic tool. Simply put, it's a social kind of experience where you put a video with a posing question or a point or a comment. But again, what it will do is once you set that standard thing up there, your learners can create a web of responses to that particular sort of starter video response that you see there in the center of the sort of web of conversations that you see within Flipgrid. Please do check it out, because again, in terms of engaging and staying connected with your learners, and hearing from them, getting the feedback from them about how they are, where they're at, all those sorts of things is super important to remember, consider, and engage with. So I'll start to wrap up now a little bit. Just going to revisit this one from Ron Berger. In your interactions, and this is again what he was saying specifically about feedback, but I think it's important that we have this sort of transparency with our conversations with our learners. Okay, so make sure that you are kind, whether you're delivering bad news or saying congratulations. Try and be kind, be specific about what it is you're talking about, and obviously try and be helpful in how you approach things and how you do it. And having that sort of kind and specific and helpful approach, again, all that does is help to foster and reinforce those positive relationships that we're trying to underpin. And there was a head teacher at a school I worked in for 10 years. Head teacher's name was John Wells. And the ethos and vision he had for the school was around positive relationships and mutual respect. I'll never forget it, because everything in the school sort of hung off that simple sort of little vision statement there. Positive relationships, mutual respect. So everything we can do to garner those positive relationships are going to work in the benefit of our learners. However we interact with them, whether it's delivering bad news, whether it's telling them off, and whether it's giving them a detention or any of those sort of things, do it in a positive way, Be kind about the stuff. Be specific about what the issues were. Be helpful in terms of how you support them in fixing any issues that may have come about because of that. And so just want us to remember to finish off. If you want to increase student academic achievement, give each student a friend. And hopefully through the activities and ideas and things that I've shared with you during the course of this session today, you'll see how you can use Microsoft's tools to underpin and support all of these different aspects that we've been talking about and covering during the course of the morning session today. And going back to what Ron Berger said in his book, An Ethic of Excellence, and if you haven't read this book, I would strongly recommend it. It's a really powerful book. But we're trying to develop self-esteem in our learners, students who bristle with pride when they submit their work to us, because of the culture we have in our school and in our classrooms. It comes from strong sense of well-being and self-esteem, and we get that from accomplishments, not through compliments. So look, I hope you found the session this morning useful. Thank you to those of you who stayed up particularly late or early, whichever way you look at it, to engage and join in with this session. As I said right from the outset, my name is Mark Anderson and my Twitter handle is ICT Evangelist. If you're looking to follow up with the session and get in touch and sort of share more ideas, then please do get in touch with me, ideally via my Twitter, and that way we can sort of share more and learn more from each other, and I can amplify your questions and things to my followers and get more responses to support and help you with your ideas. Please do tweet about the session today as well, not forgetting to use the Global EdTech Academy hashtag. Feel free to use WeAreQ. And if you're not a Twitter person, then you might want to use the Microsoft Edu hashtag as well. If you're not a Twitter person, then that's absolutely fine. You've got my contact details here down the bottom. But for now, given we're fast approaching the end of the session and I don't want to run over, I'll say thank you very much for coming along to the session, and I hope you found it to be worthwhile and a benefit. Thank you very much. And I'll just stop sharing my screen and just come back in here. I see Pabzara and Jeffrey have already. And Jeffrey, you're in Oman. Okay, cool. I worked in Sur and Muscat. Stop sharing my screen a second. Okay, brilliant stuff. So thank you for your kind comment, Jeffrey. Hope things are going well for you in Oman. Be interested to know whereabouts you work. I've got friends who work in Muscat as well. Thank you for coming to the session as well, Pabasara, sorry. Did anybody have any questions about anything before we sort of wrap things up at the end of the session? Thank you, Kanishka. Thank you very much. It's not too late in the day for you, Jeffrey. If you're in Oman, you're sort of 3 hours ahead, I think. So it should be approaching 1 p.m. I think. Unless you're a little bit further on. I've got friends, I'm meeting with some friends in virtually in Abu Dhabi, which isn't too far a drive. Go up to our lane, cut across to Muscat. Okay, well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for coming along to the session today. I can't see that there are any questions as it stands at the moment. Great that you found it useful and informative. Really appreciate that. Please do stay in touch. If you have any follow-up questions, then please do get in touch, as I said, either via my website or via Twitter. Not forgetting to use those hashtags like GETA for Global EdTech Academy, Microsoft Edu, all those sorts of things. But for now, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording. Like so.